So what did we just see? We had a fixed side, okay, fixed layout. Compare it to any of our sides a little bit, okay? And we designed it, we developed it, it is rendered good on desktop, right? Now my users have phones, iPads, let's call them devices. I'm more concerned about the screen resolution than what kind of device it is. I try to access here, it's not usable, it doesn't fit. I see some images which are not even in my, like, you know, those, you see those tiny bits there, but you don't understand what exactly is there in the image, then why have it there, right? So one reason to that, if you don't have a scalable image, why put it in the first place? You may not have it here. Secondly, you saw that it wasn't even very useful for the user to access the site and click on something, okay? So what did you do? Instead of developing it for this one, you started thinking that how do I develop a common site which can be rendered on my phone and my tablet, right? So what you had was your HTML and CSS3 properties, media queries. You knew the screen resolutions, rather more than knowing that you have this aspect which you can make use of, right? And then accordingly, you changed your thinking from fixed to fluid, right? So it is not that you are targeting this device and that device, rather you are thinking device agnostic, right? You are trying to be device agnostic, basically. So you are designing your site to fit in the phone as well as on the tablet by making it fluid and adapting it on your device. Fluid, I mean that your content has to fit. One of the techniques is fluid grids, right? What is fluid grids? Is we just saw it. The containers that was there, like what basically you do is that the wrapper container is your main container and the rest of the things that are rendered, you design a way that you always have them in divs, okay? So that you can just pick up this, put it here, pick up this, put it here, depending on the screen resolution. So your layout now will look like something like this, okay? So you always divide your content into sections, okay, into columns, and think in a way that, let's take an example of the previous side, okay? You saw the EE side, you had this heading here of the section, then you had the content here, okay? So when you reduce the screen resolution, what happened was this content, okay, this is one column, this is another column. So this second column was aligned below this, okay? So assume that this is one grid, second grid, third grid. There can be n number of grids, whatever is appropriate on your desktop resolution or iPad resolution, whatever. And then when the resolution decreases or when the resolution changes, you use your media queries, or you could use some other technique to actually align these grids so that they fit onto the target device, okay? So instead of, like, let's say if you have 4 grids or 4 columns, 4 contents, things, okay, on your desktop, you might end up just having 3 grids on your iPad. The 4th one can be either like this, okay, just expand it like this, or you can have it at the top, for example, and on the 4 you just have a vertical alignment of the content. Can you just render the responsive page? So if you just reduce it, scroll it, okay. Let's assume that these were this is one grid, this is another grid, okay. So when I reduce this further, this grid, instead of 2 column, okay, let's take, it's a column basically, right. So this gets vertically aligned instead of horizontal. this is one way of approaching fluid, okay, fluid layouts. So instead of talking in terms of grids, we always say containers, or like, you know, actually coming down and talking at a code level. So that is why, and that is what makes us easy to understand also. So yeah, you made your site fit in on your device, okay, any device. You adapted the content so that it is usable, okay. But when we did this for our problems or our projects, what we found, until now I'm just at the client side, right? I'm not even coming to any coding, back-end stuff or anything. And I'm using the screen resolution as my main input from the device, okay? But let's say I implement all these stuff, okay? And make my site responsive using the technique that we just saw. But what was happening was, when I actually start downloading this site or browsing this site on my phone, let's take an example that my client required the site to be accessed by low-end phone devices also. Nowadays smartphones are much better, but if you're taking a very small device and I try to access this site, okay, my design says that there is no image, okay? Can you just open that in the net tab? Sorry. My design says there is no image, okay? But if you see the network, refresh, reduce, shrink, yeah. There is no image rendered, okay? But if you see here, these images are being downloaded, right? Though they are not being rendered, we did not render them because they were not of any use to the user, right? They were either not scalable or they did not serve the purpose. The main content which the user could have used is being rendered. But I am downloading all these things. Do you think it's a good idea to do that? Right?
With media queries, what we did is we just made it hide, basically. So we said display none, and we are not showing it, but it is there in the DOM, and as Tate said, it is there in your code also. So that is also a drawback, which is there in adaptive.
So responsive only using client-side technique doesn't solve my problem altogether. I am still downloading the stuff. I am actually burning the client's hole, right, the user's pocket. So I'm burning a hole in his pocket by, let's say, example that he has some data plan, okay, worth some rupees, and it has a limited network, right, limited capacity basically to 1 GB and all that. And if I'm downloading, he's not being shown these images, but I'm still downloading almost 10 MB data. He's not going to come back on the site, right? So you have to minimize the content that is being displayed, at the same time minimize the data that is being downloaded. And not just downloaded, you have to make it load, okay? It is load very fast also. Like, you know, if your site is taking a lot of time to download, it's not really a very good user experience. The user is not going to, he's going to be annoyed that how much time do I have to spend just looking at the first site. Okay, first instance of the site. Then again, the scripts, okay, this was about the images, fine? But there are a couple of scripts, like your site is very fancy. Okay, nowadays your sites are really fancy. So I may not be using those scripts because my device, the low-end device, actually doesn't need them. I'm just running a very simple UI. But my desktop version of it, okay, has a lot of processing. We can give you an example of this stuff. Okay. So if you see here, if you click on the plus icon, this is all done by script, rendering the form, okay? But then if you go with the low-end stuff, okay? Yeah, not, have to disable the charge. So this is my presim side, and I'm just disabling the JavaScript. So let's say my phone doesn't support JavaScript. I'm rendering it. It is still fancy looking. Okay. It doesn't do anything when I click on it. But if you see in the net tab, all the JS is still downloaded. You'll have all this. Sorry. You won't see that now. It will still make all these requests, okay? We have optimized in a way that it won't now. Okay? So usually what happens is you find all the JS being downloaded on your devices also, and that until all of that is not downloaded, your site won't render anything. At least for images it renders half and just keeps on downloading. But for JS, unless it is not completely processed, it won't show anything on your site. So these were the problem. This was one set of problem that we faced when we developed. Just using RWD, we were not able to fix these issues. Okay? So what approach, or rather what did we find was useful for us?